CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 24, Spiritual Journey, Evolving Soul, Part 2. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Cynthia Alice here in 818 Studios with my supercalifragilistic producer.
Dave. Hey, my name is Dave. What is happening, everybody? I hope that you are doing great. Hope you had a wonderful week. How was your week? Busy as always. It's holidays. Things are getting really cranking up.
Things are cranking up, but you know what? I'm making steps this year to not be crazed at the holidays, and I hope you guys are too.
I know, especially after last year. Oh my gosh, it was because Christmas Day was a Sunday. And right. So, of course, we have Christmas Eve services, and then now we have Christmas Day, and then we have traveler services. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just, the calendar dictated kind of where Christmas fell this year. And so things feel a little bit more chill.
They
that's
do.
Okay. It's okay to be chill at Christmas time.
Yeah, right. Okay, friends, you don't have to be anxious at Christmas.
That's right.
It can be the most wonderful time
of the copywritten song.
Right.
Copywritten song. Copyrighted? Copywritten. Every episode, I have a little grammatical error moment. Last week it was, good. Well, what? Anyway.
We depend on that, Dave. It's authentic.
It is
and
authentic.
Nobody really knows the answer to that
being grammatically
anyway.
vulnerable with you guys right now.
Yes. This is how Dave shares his vulnerability,
That's
friends.
Right, for podcast listeners. For strangers on the internet to bare my soul.
Right. And by the way, we are so grateful for people joining us from all around the world.
All over the world.
I continue to be amazed, surprised, and delighted, most of all, that so many people from around the world are listening, are tuning in, because it affirms what I believe, that the world is more good than bad, that people are waking up to the truth of who they are all over the world, and that the world is full of spiritual souls trying to make this world a better place by living the light to the best of their ability, that they know at the moment. So I bless you, friends. I'm so glad you're back with us. This, I can't believe it, is show 24. We are continuing on, and Dave and I are not slowing down.
It's show number 24. And, I just pulled up the countries here: Canada, Brazil, United Kingdom, Australia, Denmark.
Yes. Hey, Denmark is new.
Hey, Denmark. Welcome.
Hey,
Hope
glad
you're listening. Thank you for listening.
Glad you're here. And I talked to a friend the other day in Korea. He may not have downloaded yet, but he's going to. So that is super cool. And even there are some too in the Russian Federation, but leave it to Russia. We can't tell how many.
That's right.
So that's really strange, but I love that actually, and I'm happy, friends, that you're joining us. I was telling someone the other day that there are people from all over the world, and they were like, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." And we're probably we're over, I'm sure, 6,000 now downloads, and it's just miraculous because this started as a divine idea. And we're going to talk about that very thing today. I mean, today is, I don't know if I've even said, I got so excited, that this is Spiritual Journey Evolving Soul Part 2.
Yeah, Part 2.
And the reason it's exciting is that what we talked about last week is starting the day, checking in with your feelings, your body, the energy. How is the universe holding me? How do I, and then the time of prayer and meditation, after the time of spiritual focus, contemplating life from the highest possible perspective. And the way this podcast came into being was that I was doing just that. And a part of what I do every day, and again, this will be a future show, is where I work so much with my vision and goals for my life. And one of my goals was a podcast. And the idea that came through the time of spiritual focus, when I wrote it down, I thought, I don't know anything about a podcast, but I'm going to do one. And I talked to one of my friends. She's a dear friend, and she's a doctor. She's a brilliant mind. And she said to me, "Well, have you ever listened to one?" I said, "Not often. I don't really even know how it works on the phone." So I interviewed people who listened to podcasts. I interviewed people who had produced podcasts. And I really did my homework, friends, and it paid off because We are having more success than we imagined, and we are prepared for more, and we are planning accordingly with what we hope to be spirit-filled shows that really support those of you living the authentic spiritual journey. The name of this show is Authentic Spiritual Journey, and we're on it, and we know you're on it with us. So today, Spiritual Journey Evolving Soul Part 2 is about deepening the show from last week. I already mentioned what we talked about. I want to do it one more time in case you missed the show, to get it really firm in your consciousness. Because so many people tell me they listen when they drive to work in the morning, because they decided to start the day with a positive thought and energy rather than negative news. So last week, we talked a lot about what it means to do a feeling check-in or a daily check-in, and to check in before we even get out of bed with, how is the universe holding me today? That was the question, to see if we could get a sense, an energy, I'll call it a hit, a spiritual hit. It's like, hey man, yeah, that's cool. Give me a hit of that. What is my spiritual hit for the day? What am I going to be moving into? What is the temperature outside? What season do I find myself in? How is this informing what may be asked of me today? And then we also talked about, when we receive the feeling nature, we do that to become present. We do that to not have our feelings come out sideways on somebody else when they have nothing to do with what we may be feeling. So the idea is to get the feeling down on paper, to, in other words, let the paper hold some of our process instead of it going around and round in our minds. And then the body work too, to sense, how is the body feeling? What does my body need right now? And frankly, friends, both with myself and with my family, sometimes I will even receive guidance about how I'm to help and support family members when I'm checking in with my own body. So it's very interesting how spirit begins to inform us when we start to become more and more open to receive. That we talked about, our bodies can give us clues. Maybe we're fatigued. Maybe we are feeling irritable. Maybe even energetically, there's a sense of dread for our day. These are all clues that something might need to shift. These are all clues that we want to be spiritually prepared for what we're going to do for the day. And then we talked about making a list of whatever we have to do, make a list of to do and a list of to be. And as we do that, then we are spiritually preparing ourselves for the day, so that whatever we're going to be doing, we're going to have the right energy on board so that we can have the highest possibility of success. Also realizing we're all human, but that our intention plays a large role in the success of how we, march through our communications and things of that nature. So then the very last point we made last week was just about the time of spiritual focus, which is our time of meditation and receptivity to sense what might be next for us. That we wanted to take all of that, the feeling, the body, the energy check-in, the question from the universe. Well, first we want to ask, is there any action to take? And then we want to take all of that into our time of spiritual focus, what many of us call meditation and contemplation, and just sit with that. And as we sit with it, as we breathe, as we meditate on it, that then we might get a divine idea. Maybe we would shift a little bit what we were first thinking. So
I had a question about the meditation and just thinking about it from last week, and I'm only voicing this because it's been a block for me, and it might be a block for one of our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I approach meditation, especially originally, I just felt silly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I just felt silly, like this isn't gonna work. You know what I mean? And
right.
And so I'm just kind of admitting that. And
Oh,
so how to kind of get over that and
yeah.
and beyond just muscling through it and committing to do it. But you know what I'm saying? It's just
I think it's a great. I think it's a great question, especially if it's completely out of your wheelhouse in terms of how you've grown up. Most of us grew up. Okay, you pray at mealtime, you say the Lord's Prayer, and you maybe you pray in church out loud, but it's usually written down. And so many of us learned how to recite prayer, but the idea of just sitting in a state of receptivity is very foreign in Western culture. In Eastern culture, from the time that you're born, your house theoretically is full of meditation because it's in the culture in a way that it's not for us. So yes, I think many people feel like they're going to do it wrong, or is this silly, and is it going to work? And all I can say to that is keep coming back. It works.
Just keep trying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not alone in feeling
not
that
at
kinda,
all.
okay.
No, not at all. Probably when you were a kid, most people tell me this anyway.
Okay.
That when they were kids, they would have times where they would just lay in the grass and look at the clouds, or they would just play with no thought of what was next. Or in my case, there was this rock I would go to. It was a very large rock that I called the Big Rock. And I would go down there and just lay there and be under the trees, and I would feel the wind and I would hear the birds. And what I didn't know is that I was meditating. So when we think of meditating, we think, okay, you sit and there's a hand mudra you have to have, and you go,
right.
And that is wonderful.
That is one way to do it.
That is one way to do it, and it's a wonderful way. And the truth is, the Buddhists are the teachers on meditation, and Hindus as well. I mean, Hinduism is probably the oldest religion in the world, and meditation is the cornerstone. So I haven't found a wrong way to meditate yet. Somebody told me recently there was a wrong way, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Because what's most important is the intention of, okay, I want to hear God, and that's really what meditation is. I want to clear my mind of my thoughts of what's supposed to be, and my to-do list, and me making it happen. And maybe there's this divine idea that wants to come in and through. So, I want to be open to that. And so I think when that's your intention, I don't think you can go wrong ultimately.
Right. And I've definitely had times of that. It's just the intentional putting on headphones, or just sitting completely still, laying down, or sitting there in a seat folded, position with your legs crossed.
I'm sitting right now, by the way.
Right. Well, that's natural for you, but for me, that has never.
That hurts.
That's gotta hurt. There's that.
That's gotta hurt.
Right. It's just that feels forced. I don't know.
Oh, that's important too. I'm glad you said that. It is not important necessarily to sit as I am, and if you're just listening, I'm going to have to describe it. But I'm sitting in what, if you're in preschool, they call it crisscross applesauce, and if you're in the era I grew up, that was called Indian style, but it's truly very similar to the way you might sit in certain yoga postures. Which yoga there is a yoga of meditation. And ultimately, by the way, what we think of as yoga now is only the physical aspect of meditation. So the way I'm sitting, and I have both hands, it happens to be on each of my knees. But when I meditate, often I'm sitting up in bed or lying in bed, that you don't have to be in an upright position. There are a few schools of thought on why you do that. Especially in Hinduism, there's a large, there's a lot of importance that gets placed upon the physical position and the spine being erect, and also the focus on the focus on the third eye, which I've talked a little bit about in different shows, which is also the sixth chakra. So even though these are good things, and even though these are things that I certainly would recommend, that's not the only way to do it. So that's why I brought up when I was a kid being on the Big Rock, because probably those were some of my most profound moments of meditation, because I was in such a place of stillness and surrounded by the woods, which was a real place of safety for me.
So it's not about having this certain incense or this candle or this certain, Tibetan bell, Tibetan bowl, or it's not about having those accoutrements of meditation as much as it is your approach to it and your mindset.
Oh yes, that's very true. And I'm as we're speaking, I was just removing my prayer mala, which is you know, this is not Christian, this is Hindu, but in Christianity, I mean, Catholics have what?
Prayer beads.
The prayer beads,
Yep.
the rosary,
Yep.
the rosary beads. So, so many religions involve, different tools. But I jokingly say, you don't have to light incense and ring bells to reach God. But in fact, those things are helpful.
They're helpful, right? Yeah.
In fact, those things are helpful. But I mean, I've known some people that were so busy doing so many rituals around it that they forgot to be quiet.
Right.
And so it's not about the outward stuff. I've had incredible meditations on airplanes when I was surrounded with complete chaos. I've had incredible meditations. I would say the other place I've had some of the best meditations. One has been in a group setting when everybody was meditating because the energy was so increased. And another one was when I was doing a Japanese form of meditation many years ago when I lived in Seattle. Wow, I had some incredible spiritual mountaintop experiences, blissful experiences, visions that I received. So none of those came in a seated position doing the Om. In the case of the Japanese practice, I was actually in physical pain because of the meditation bench I was sitting on, and somebody was singing, the whole time, just right to me and giving me this treatment. And physically, even though I was in pain, my soul and my mind were so far out there that it was an incredible experience. And the only thing I think the physical thing did was put me in a state of surrender.
Mm.
And so the reason people sit in this crisscross applesauce style is, there is some legitimacy to placing the body in a state of openness. And so when you're sitting like this, especially if you're on the ground, you're really grounding yourself because you're sitting on the ground on your first chakra, and, your feet are not blocking. So it's like at the base of the spine,
Gotcha,
right?
right.
Right. And so for, if you're trying to open up the Kundalini energy, which is, again, an ecstatic spiritual experience, this can be very helpful. But if you're new to it, I mean, some of that stuff can be kind of overwhelming. Or it would have been for me if somebody would have said, "It's time to open your Kundalini." I would have been like, "What the?"
Even just now, I'm like, oh, well, that's
That's
a new word I've never heard before. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to talk about that in future shows. But it's basically where this energy comes up the spine, and it's like, whoa! I mean, you have an ecstatic spiritual experience, and I have opened my Kundalini energy when I wasn't trying, and it was in a voice lesson because of the deep breathing I was doing. There's a certain kind of breathing, and you do it in Hatha Yoga too, I believe. It's called fire breathing, a breath of fire. I can't remember the word in Sanskrit right now. This kind of left my mind, but. And as I did it, I was actually working with my voice teacher, who's an opera singer in New York, and we were actually working over the computer, and she felt it as well. And I said, I just was like laughing and crying at the same time. And then I said, all the masters are here. I could see in my living room. I was sitting at my dining table, and between my dining table and my living room, the masters were all standing there. And by the masters, I mean Jesus Christ, Paramahansa Yogananda, the Buddha. I mean, it was just, and it went on, and it was just, the support of the universe was incredible. I'll never forget it. And now, because I've opened that energy, I can contact it. I don't want to say easily, but I can regularly.
Like you remember how to get there.
I remember how to get there. And so the idea of meditation in general is that you're creating a place inside yourself. And the reason we do it daily is so it becomes easier to go back there.
Right.
It's just like, I think I mentioned several months ago, in August, I started working with a physical trainer and trainer of my physical body, I should say. And he's really incredible. I mean, he's in great shape, and he really motivates me. Well, I'd never really worked out on machines and things, and I'm kind of analog, So I was like, I don't know if I want a machine. And so the first time I did it was like, wait, you do what? You pull this and you move this to move the weights, and then you do that. So the first time I did it felt kind of awkward, and I was like, I don't know if this is helping. And anyway, long story short, it's been 4 months. And so now I go in, I adjust the machines, and all is well. And I believe that's how meditation is as well.
Gotcha.
It gets you at the beginning, it feels awkward and weird. And then 3 or 4 months, if you do it every day, pretty soon you're sitting down and because you've done it every day, your body goes, oh, we know what to do. And your breathing starts deepening almost immediately. The thoughts leave your head quicker, and you're able to get some divine guidance for your
It's
life.
interesting that you mentioned yoga as well, because I recognize the same kind of block, for lack of a better word. It's not really a block, but Shannon does yoga, and she's encouraged me to do yoga, and I'm like,
You're a white straight guy. What do you know about yoga?
I don't want to do yoga, and it's not even like that's girly. Nothing,
I know, I get
nothing
it.
that coalesced.
No.
It's just there's resistance to it, and yeah, I think I just need to get over it and give it a shot. When I had my back injury, we've talked about that on the show,
right.
and I'm doing these exercises at home, and Shannon goes, I don't want to say anything, but you're doing yoga.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you you're doing yoga, but you are.
Doing yoga, Dave. I'm like, dang it. It took me getting flat on my back to finally do yoga.
That's funny, because even though I talk about it and I really encourage it, I have a huge resistance to yoga also. I want to like box or something and, do like cool guy stuff.
Yeah, like learning how to box, that actually seems pretty exciting.
It is. And I just did boxing yesterday for the first time. And I had a lot of fun with that. So yeah, so yoga is a wonderful form, though, because it engages the body and is the deep breathing and stuff. But again, friends, if there is, and I'm speaking to anyone, okay, Dave too, but anybody, anytime there's a resistance, that's something to look at. I've had to look at it in myself. I'll speak for myself. When I was younger, I got my mom running, or my mom and I started running together. I needed to do it for school, and she wanted to do it. So my mom started running when she was 55, and she probably started yoga around 60. And for her 70th birthday, she ran the New York Marathon. And when she was 80, she ran her last half marathon. She way passed me up, and when she's 75, she was standing on her head doing yoga poses and stuff. And I would do yoga with her, and I really enjoyed it. But every time I go to a class, it may not be my form, but I see how beneficial it is. And so I do like stretches and stuff like that, but I don't do like a class, even though I say to everybody, try yoga, because
Shannon loves it. She
it's
absolutely loves it. So, and it's interesting that you talked about getting a trainer, because one of the things we're talking about today is receiving guidance.
Yes.
And even having a block for that, and like, hey, I know everything, and getting a mentor or something like that, that can be pretty challenging, especially if you are supposed to have all the answers. Like as a teacher, I'm supposed to have all the answers. And so the idea of me taking lessons feels foreign to my students, like, hey, I take lessons,
right.
So
right.
Anyway.
Right. No, I think, hopefully, friends, this podcast is a bit of guidance for your life, and that's the idea. And when we meditate, what I want to get to today is that you are receiving guidance for your life from within out. So you receive guidance, yes, as you listen to people, yes, probably as you listen to this podcast to a degree, but ultimately we want to encourage you on your authentic spiritual journey. The authentic aspect is that you have your own answers. You are, in fact, you are the captain of your soul, so to speak. As the great poem says, that is Invictus.
Yeah, Invictus.
Invictus. We'll have to put that in the show notes as well.
On it.
But one of our points we wanted to talk about today, in fact, was receiving guidance. And that's important because as we meditate, as we do contemplative work, and as we are in a state of receptivity, what will happen is that you will receive what are called divine ideas. Again, I said last show that the number one question is kind of one and the same. One is, am I doing it right? And two is, how do I know if it's spirit? In other words, am I doing it right? And I want to give you some ways to practice what it means to receive guidance and then move forward on your own. So you receive guidance, then you move forward, you receive guidance, and then you move forward. And that question is it ego or is it soul? One of the key ways to know it's soul or spirit is another way to say that, from spirit, I should say, speaking to your soul, is that the fundamental question should be, is it good for me? And again, is it good for everyone? If you think your inner voice is telling you to go hurt somebody or hurt yourself, that's not from spirit. Okay, clearly. But now some of those things are a little more slippery to know, okay, because it's like, well, I want to go get another job, or I want to go get a new car, or I want to do this or I knew that. Well, it's easy to say, well, that's from ego. But sometimes the very thing that you're guided to go get is important for your soul growth and evolution, because to allow yourself to desire that thing is growth in your soul. In other words, you are allowed to have desires. And for some of us, maybe we weren't allowed to desire. Somebody else might say, oh, look at that ego desire. But for you to want that thing is absolutely straight from the soul, which brings me to an aside here that I want to say. Friends, be careful not to compare your soul's journey with someone else's. I'm going to say that one more time. Friends, be careful not to compare your soul's journey with someone else's. This is important because if we start comparing ourselves to somebody else, we're not focused on our journey, we're focused on their journey. And that is very alluring to see what other people are doing, and then also making judgments about what they should be doing, rather than looking for ourselves at our own lives. So we're going to talk more about that, about receiving guidance, about ego and soul, when we come back from the break.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. Christ Church Unity is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. CCU Orlando is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We would also like to extend our thanks to our podcast partner, Aikens Counseling Center. Cassandra Aikens is a licensed mental health counselor dedicated to creating sacred space where clients can explore their own inner process in a safe, non-judgmental, and supportive environment. She works with individuals, couples, and groups who are seeking to live a more authentic life. Aikens Counseling Center is located in Winter Park, Florida, and can be found on the web at CassandraAikens.com. We now return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
Welcome back, friends. I love speaking about this. I hope you're enjoying listening as much as I'm enjoying bringing this episode to you. I think it is so important that each of us listen to the guidance of our own souls. And it's probably the hardest thing we do on the journey, because we are taught to listen to everything but our souls. Listen to the pastors, listen to the books we read, do these 5 easy steps and all will be well in your life. So there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of challenge in working your own soul's journey. That's why you hear me call it soul work, is because working with your soul is difficult, and it's also filled with a lot of joy and gratitude. What's the word? Yes, joy and gratitude, but it's like there gets to be the point where we receive guidance and then we follow it. Then we can have moments of celebration and ahas, like, yes, that was the voice of the divine. I was supposed to do that. And so there's a lot of celebration and joy and even freedom when we move into that. So I want to give you a couple of examples too, but I want to go back to one thing I said, which was one of the ways you know you are receiving divine guidance is it good for me in the absolute form, and is it good for everyone? Again, if you're getting guidance to go hurt yourself or somebody, that's obviously not from God. But then, if you're thinking things like that, you're probably not listening to this podcast. That would just be my guess. The things most of us deal with are the things that are that again, depending on our motivation, might be egocentric. But all desire ultimately is from God. And so we honor the desire. And when our intention is good, boy, that makes up for a lot. I mean, I think there's times where we might receive guidance and make a step. And if we feel like, ooh, this is ego motivated, then we can make a new step, right? The other thing that I see people do is they blindly follow an internal guidance, and without planning for the future, without giving considerable thought to what this change might mean. Like one Sunday, I was talking about this very thing, about receiving internal guidance and making a shift. And somebody came up to me the next week and said, I was so glad for what you said last week about following your guidance. I'd been having a problem in my relationship of 20 years, and I felt like my guidance was to leave. So I left the relationship. And I was like, oh my goodness, let's talk about that, because I didn't say leave your relationship of 20 years just because you get one idea in meditation. We need to be working with these ideas. We need to be praying about these ideas. We need to be journaling, because just leaving a relationship of 20 years, I mean, unless there's abuse involved, is probably not a good idea off one idea in meditation. These things have to be thought about, worked with. And oftentimes we want to also ask for signs from the universe.
Yeah, we used to call that confirmation. I need confirmation on this.
Right. And it's so important because there's this cool part of the brain. It's called the reticular activating mechanism. And this part of the brain is the part of the brain that it's like when you buy a car and then suddenly you see those cars everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, there's my car again. I never saw these cars. Well, they were actually always there, but you didn't have the consciousness to see it. Right. And so when you get this divine idea, let's say the divine idea is to expand in your work. I'm making this up. And as you want to go expand in your work, you start to notice opportunities to do that. All right. That's confirmation from the universe that your consciousness is right on point. Now, it doesn't mean you leave your work that day. It means, okay, yes, these are divine ideas. So what are you going to put in place so that you can, move forward on this idea? My in everything that we do spiritually, it's so much like things with the physical body, as I was saying about the physical workout. I didn't go to the gym my very first day and do what I'm doing now, because if I would have thrown my back out.
Yeah, you would have hurt yourself.
I would have hurt myself.
Yep.
And so if we're new to this idea of meditation and receiving divine guidance and then moving forward, and we do it without preparation and maybe even supporting guidance, we're going to make some really bad choices for ourselves, because we haven't learned to distinguish the voice of ego or soul. I'm going to say that again because I hit the microphone. We need to be able to distinguish between the voice of ego or soul. This means that we need to slow everything down. We need to really listen carefully. And part of listening is there are certain characteristics that are typically ego and certain that are typically spirit speaking to your soul. And I want to give you those so you can start differentiating for yourself. But one of the things is that ego is always trying to prove a point. It argues. Ego is like, okay, you need to do this because. And the scriptures say God comes in the still small voice. There's a scripture that says, I was not in the earthquake. I'm not in the fire. I'm in the still small voice. So often when it's spiritual guidance, it'll come as a still small voice, and it will keep returning into our meditation time until we hear it. Now, That's really important to be cognizant of when we're thinking of ego or soul. The ego is always trying to push us past where we're ready. The soul voice will be like, next step. And oftentimes, even if it is from the soul, it might feel too grand for us to do right away. But we know it's the voice of spirit if it's a persistent kind of quiet urging and desire. Ego feels like pros and cons. And it argues. And the thing about spirit is we have eternity to do this stuff, friends. That's the good news and the bad news. So if we decide not to do it right now, guess what? Well, we may lose the opportunity for now, maybe even this lifetime, but it will return again probably whenever we're ready in consciousness. There's something I like to think of on the spiritual journey called windows of opportunity. And when we receive guidance for something, if we don't move forward, that window will close. And we don't know when it's going to open again. So even though I'm saying there's both the waiting for the right opportunity and there's also not rushing, so it is the mature spiritual soul who's worked with these ideas that knows the difference. When is an opportunity, making itself manifest? Now, I feel like I'm rewinding, even though maybe I'm not, but it feels like it. We want to start small with this idea. We want to start really small, meaning that we want to make decisions that, don't end a 20-year relationship. We want to make decisions that are fairly benign in their, if we don't make a good choice, then, nobody's hurt in the process, ourselves included. So this may sound like a funny way, but when I was first starting ministerial school, it was actually just before ministerial school, and I was meditating morning and night, and I was doing all my affirmations about moving forward on my journey. And I was really guided. I was really trying to work on following my guidance. And so the idea came to me that every day I would ask God's guidance on what I was to wear for the day. And I thought, okay, nobody's going to get hurt in the process if I wear something really weird. Somebody may say I look weird, but who knows? They might say that already. So I thought, okay, this is a really good thing to do. So every morning I would meditate in my jammies, and until I got the internal guidance for what I was to wear today, for that particular day, I would not get dressed. And I got several strange combinations. And what happened at first, as I was following my guidance and then taking the steps, I would go to ministerial school and somebody would say, "Wow, you look fabulous today." And I was thinking, this thing is, old. This is really interesting. And I was like, okay, this is confirmation from the universe. I get it. I did the right thing, and I'm getting this feedback from the universe. Well, then next day or so, I'd wear these real weird combinations and nobody would say anything. And I thought, okay, I wonder what's going on here. And this went on, for several months, that every day I would, ask my guidance for what to wear for the day. So finally, it got to the point where nobody was saying anything, and this went on for weeks. And so I went into meditation again, and I was saying, okay, God, I'm open and I'm receptive. I'm trying to receive your guidance for the day. And I know it's just about my clothes, but help me understand why I'm not getting any external feedback. Am I to stop this process? And the message came through loud and clear. You're not getting any outer confirmation because you don't need it anymore. Okay, now that made sense. And I felt a real peace come over me, and that's another aspect of receiving soul guidance. You hear the voice of spirit when you have a resounding peace in your soul, and only you can know what that is. It is only you that can know when this happens internally. So to this day, I still have this practice. It's a fun way for me to be operating with spirit, to be listening to the inner voice. And there's literally a different tone, and in music we call it a different timbre, a different quality to the voice, my internal voice, when I'm listening to the voice of spirit through my soul, than my ego voice. So I want to encourage you, friends, if you're going to try this, to do it with really benign things, things that are not going to like wreck your life if you make a bad choice. You could try a new way to work. You can try all kinds of things. There might be something you're thinking of that I can't even think of right now, some small way to keep checking in with spirit. And then as we move forward in shows in the future, you're going to probably hear little aspects of this. And the last point today, which this moves right into, is taking spiritually motivated action. What so many of us do, so many of us know what's ours to do, when and how to do it, and we don't do it. Can I have an amen, Dave?
Amen.
I thought I needed to wake you up over there.
No, I'm good.
You were like going like deep. I was like, more coffee, Dave, more coffee. Which maybe I'll take a sip right now.
Yeah,
Praise God.
Take a victory sip. Yeah. I think while you're taking a sip, I think it's one thing to keep in mind is don't fleece God. You know what I mean? Have you heard that phrase before?
I have,
yeah.
but say more about that.
Fleecing is it's a Bible story where they set if there's dew on the fleece in the morning, then that means that God wanted this to happen. If there isn't, then God wanted this to happen.
Right.
And so you end up, like if you get a paper cut opening up, an acceptance letter to a college, does that mean the universe
I'm not
doesn't
supposed to?
want? Right. I can't go to this college. I got a paper cut. And so I feel like that could be a little bit of a slippery slope
Yes,
because
it can.
you're removing all like I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just like you might as well have a D20 dice and just roll
Yeah,
a
just
dice
roll the
every
dice.
time for every decision.
Well, I like to call that metaphysical malpractice, where we're taking life so seriously. Like this often happens in Unity, which is our particular denomination. And, I've had people say, like, one time I had a cold and I said, you may hear my voice is a little scratchy today. I'm just getting over a cold. And somebody came up to me and said, what do you think you did that called that cold into your consciousness? I said, I was living on planet Earth where there are germs.
Right, exactly.
And I was probably tired.
Maybe the guy at Jason's Deli didn't wash his hands
Yeah,
enough
no,
or something.
Somebody sneezed on my sandwich and then I ate it.
Nothing
I don't
against
know.
Jason's Deli, by the way.
We love Jason's, as a matter of fact, gluten-free options. So, So
Yeah, I think it's just important to keep in mind
It is.
and temper asking the universe for confirmation
Right.
and everything
Well-
with your own spirit. I mean,
exactly, with your own spirit. And so, yes, it's spirit speaking in and through our own souls. So, yeah, we want to be really cognizant, of not turning our power over because until I learned how to differentiate the voice, there was one thing that there was an energy I was listening to, I discovered that was not a healthy energy. And I thought at the time that was what I was supposed to be doing. So when we do take our action, we want to take action, again, in the small things first, and then move forward from there. But it's spiritually motivated action. And when our action is spiritually motivated, it simply means it's coming from the soul and coming from the highest spiritual perspective that we know, so that our action doesn't have so much attachment to it. When we receive guidance, we move forward gently, and we're kind of testing the waters. We see where again, what is the energy coming back? How are we feeling? Is there an overwhelming sense of peace? Or are we feeling like, this doesn't feel quite right? So what some people do, I had this person I was mentoring. She was a wonderful, wonderful person, human being. She was becoming a minister, and we had been working together on her speaking in other churches. She really wanted to speak. She had this goal, and we were working on her, affirmations and her visualizing that. And so we'd been working on it for probably, 5 or 6 months. And she called me up. She said, "You'll never believe what happened. I got a call from a church to go speak." And I go, "Great. What did you say?" Well, I told them I had to pray about it. I said, "No, sweetheart, you already prayed about it." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You've been praying for 6 months. The only answer is yes."
right, yeah.
So often Spirit is saying, "Here you go." And we go, "Oh, I don't know." No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, suddenly we like cave and don't know anything. It's like,
Well, it's because we've abdicated
Right.
responsibility
Right.
for so many things that
Yeah.
when it comes time for you to move, now suddenly we're paralyzed with indecision.
Yes. So take heart, friends. Part of the journey is moving forward courageously after we have received the action. So hear me say, you receive the guidance, you get clear if it's ego or soul. And if you're not clear, by all means, do not take action. There's no rush. Spirit has eternity. But again, there is a divine timing to the action. So when it's time to take our spiritually motivated action, we do it with a lot of faith and courage.
Yeah, what I found works for me is more of a like a checks system.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm gonna walk into something and walk forward with something, and I instead of waiting for confirmation and I need the universe to say yes, I almost keep feelers out and keep feelers out for the universe saying maybe not. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
do you?
Yes.
And we would say, I feel a check in my spirit about this. You know,
That's a
just,
great
I feel a
thing.
check about this, so I'm just gonna just a little some of my spidey senses tingling, or
Oh
however,
yeah, right.
however
I
you
love
want
my
to,
spidey
right?
sense.
However you want to put it,
Well,
and I find that there's a lot more freedom in that, and I think
yes,
it's a balance. You know, it's a balance, and
it
that
is.
helps keep me from fleecing God over every decision.
Well, I have a friend. I learned so much from her. Her name is Jill Rogers, and she's also a minister, and she lives in Phoenix now, and she's married to another friend named Richard Rogers. And she used to do this thing where she would say, "I'm going to lean into this decision," and I got it. It was like, it's like what you're saying. Like when we get this idea and this guidance, it's like, there's like this check where we're going, is this it? And then it's like, yes. And then sometimes it's yeah, but, and then it's a yes,
Hmm.
and so again, the spiritual work, friends, and the spiritual journey is done behind closed doors. It's not sexy. It's not, it's not something you're going to be telling every friend about. It's a really quiet process that happens within your very own soul.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like it just happens,
Yes,
and it's
yes.
not this long drawn out process.
That's
It's
true.
not, petitioning the Lord for divine intervention.
Please,
It's
God,
like,
yeah.
should I buy this Volkswagen?
Well, the
you're
answer,
there.
of course, is yes.
Always yes,
Yeah.
especially if it's a convertible.
Yeah.
But with Shannon and I, speaking of Volkswagen, in February,
They should sponsor our show. Why don't
They
you
should.
contact them?
I'll
if
do
they'll
that.
sponsor the
Here,
show.
let me type all that out. All right. Oh no, it turns out they don't sponsor podcasts.
Bummer.
It's like how I sent that email so fast. Anyway, and so we were looking to buy the car, and it just felt right, and
Yeah.
neither of us had a
Yeah.
check about it, and we walked in that morning, and we drove home with a brand new car, new to us car later that day, and it wasn't this long drawn out process. Now,
Exactly.
there have been times when we're like, should I leave this job or should we move from Memphis? And that was
That is a
was done
process.
with deep prayer and consideration. But yeah, again, going back to not fleecing God over every single
decision.
and then when you
Because-
feel guided, move on it.
Right. Well, we want to be empowered, right? The authentic spiritual journey means, hey, I'm a soul. I'm here with a purpose, so I'm going to move forward in my purpose. But yeah,
Oh, it's a fight. It's fine.
the larger life questions. Career is a big one because we don't want to jump before we're really ready. And again, we want divine timing because we want it to be good for
Yeah,
everybody.
and career reverberates through so many aspects of your life.
Right, and I know that Memphis move, like you've said, was a really big one. My move to Kansas City for school, my move to Phoenix, and my move to Orlando have all been huge moves on the spiritual journey. And some of those, the move to Phoenix from Kansas City, I did this release process. I'm ready for a job, and the next day the phone rang. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah,
what?
sometimes you're jumping.
Yeah.
With you're leaping without looking. Like when we moved to Memphis, I literally thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. I
Yeah,
think we've talked about that
right,
on the show. But
right.
Orlando, we had all of these ducks in a row, and we knew exactly what was going to happen.
Right. And again, those are all signs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all signs. And we don't have to like investigate every sign. It's like, okay, yeah.
And being faithful and convinced that the universe has your back.
Again, God's will for me is good.
Right. God did not lead me into the wilderness to starve.
That's right. The universe has your back, that's for sure. And the universe and every moment is supporting us. So whatever level of spirituality we're experiencing right now is at whatever level we're ready to receive. Spirit's not holding anything back from us. We may not be open to receiving. So all of the work we've done up to this point, and especially the last couple shows about this deeper meditative work, receiving guidance, and then moving forward and taking action, friends, this is the real spiritual work of the soul. So once again, we thank you for joining us. We love you. We bless you. We hope you're going to have the best holidays ever. We're planning on it.
Oh, heck yeah.
And the next few shows in December are going to really support you for the holidays. We're going to really encourage you to share these because we want everybody to be everyone's life to be filled with joy, with freedom, sense of purpose, because we're living from our souls. So bless you. Thank you so much for joining us.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Angela Martinez, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, and Two Spirits Health Services, along with our partner patrons, CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. For information, episode show notes, and details about our other shows on the channel, head over to experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoyed this program, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2018, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Shannon Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.